What's up, my little grimlets? So I am back in the garage today. Basically, I'm going to be showing you guys how to swap out a caliper. The reason we are swapping out the caliper on this 90K 1500 is last weekend we attempted to bleed the brakes. The bleeder here, I don't know if you can see that or not. Let me grab the light. So there's a bleeder on top of the caliper here. It did not want to move. So I heated it up, sprayed it down with some penetrating oil. Did that a few times, put a wrench on it, it started to move, and then it just snapped off. So we went ahead and just got new calipers. We're going to swap those out. So today I'm going to show you a video on how to do that, how to swap your calipers out. For most people that work on cars, this may be a simple thing. If you've never touched this before, this may be a learning curve. If you don't know, hopefully this video will help you out. Typically, on your car, you have these rubber lines that are your brake lines. Generally, so you don't lose a bunch of brake fluid, which we have to bleed the whole system anyway because we put brand new lines all the way throughout. You would take a pair of vice grips, crimp that line closed, it'll stop the flow. We, because this does have a 3-inch lift on it, went to braided stainless lines. Basically, with these, you don't want to try to crimp them, crush them, you're going to smash that line. So what I'm going to do is remove the caliper itself, leave the line attached, put the new caliper on, and then as quick as I can without dropping banjo bolts and stuff, which I'll explain that here in a little bit, crush washers, whatever you want to call them, to make sure we don't lose those. We'll put the new caliper itself on with the pads in it. Yeah, I should probably change the pads. I'm not going to. We're just going to run what's on here. And we will throw that all on. We'll break that line loose real fast, reconnect it to the new caliper, and then that will also let some of that fluid leak down to this side, so when we go to bleed it, there will already be fluid at that end. There's most definitely going to be air, but that's why you bleed the system anyway. So let's jump in here and get you guys some more light here so you can kind of see what we got going on. So this setup, a lot of newer cars run a 4-bolt setup. You will have an actual bracket here for your pads that is removable. This is all one unit, so it makes things a little easier, somewhat. So this is the new one. As you can see, it's all just one solid unit. On a lot of newer cars, there will be a bolt here and a bolt here, and this would be a separate bracket that bolts to the caliper housing. So you would zip these bolts out, this center section would come out, your pads slide in there, and then this goes back on top. Like I said, this is all one solid unit, so we don't have to mess with that. So on here, these are Torx bits, 3/8. Most of your brake stuff is standard, at least on trucks and brake lines and stuff, even though most of the other bolts you're going to find are going to be metric. So all we got to do is zip these 2 bolts out. I wish my camera would have been rolling, or been charged actually. When I went to do the driver's side, I found out that there was not a bolt on the bottom side over there, which was really weird, considering there is only 2 bolts to hold this thing on. And whoever did brakes on this last, because this chassis is not the original chassis, so it wasn't us, but whoever did it last stripped all the threads out of the bottom hole on the actual hub itself. So I had to go through and re-tap that hole, and I wish my camera would have been charged, because I would have started with that and shown you basically how to tap a hole, because I'm sure that's something some other people don't know how to do. Not hard. Essentially, you just have to figure out what your pattern, your bolt pattern is, or your thread count, thread pitch, that kind of thing. And of course, I will show you, before we put the new one on, we are going to lube up the slides. And the reason you lube slides is for this right here. These are loose, but they're so dry, there's a metal sleeve on the inside, and these things will freeze together. Which is why sometimes you will get a brake pull from a car. It's because these slide pins are locked up. So it can't, when you hit your brakes and then you release it, these slides are supposed to be able to shift and move to let the pressure back off the pad. Well, if they can't move because they're frozen, you'll start wearing those pads out prematurely on one side over the other, and you'll start to get a brake pull. So we will go ahead, there we go. See, this one is stuck inside that sleeve. That sleeve is supposed to stay inside of there, but it's been so long since anyone has lubed these, it's just stuck. I have a feeling this one, nope, this one, see the difference there? The bolt and the bolt with the sleeve. So this one's stuck. But the new caliper has all new stuff in there, so we don't have to worry about that. Now, oh man, this stuff, of course, is so frozen and old and crusty that it doesn't want to come off. So I'll take a dead blow, knock some chunks off, and see if we can get it to move. Essentially, once we get either end past this little lip here that it locks into, it'll pop out. Sometimes that sleeve will stay over, and what that does is keeps this from wanting to come out. But I can see a gap there, so it's just frozen together, which is basically everything that was on this truck. So there we go. It is slowly moving. All this up before we put the new one on, so we don't have this problem in the future. But we got to get this one off first, and then I may have to go to a bigger pry bar. So there is a reason that dealerships and automotive shops charge a rate for working on your car. And sometimes you think, oh man, that's inflated, you know? I can do that for nothing. Well, those guys are charging by the hour, basically. And when you start running into crap like this, they got to make sure they have that built into their margin. Plus, most shops, especially in a corporate shop, the guy sitting behind the desk isn't setting their hourly rate. He's also not setting their resets for what they charge to do a brake job or an alignment or whatever else. That's usually set by some guy sitting behind a desk somewhere. He's really good at crunching numbers, so you can't always be mad at those guys because they are doing what they're told. As a guy who has done service writing, it's not always fun telling a customer how much a job is going to be, but it's a necessity. It's part of the job. So this thing is crusty. So these brake pads, a lot of brake pads just kind of snap into a spot. These, you can see that, have these little nipples that drop into these little holes on the actual caliper themselves. So we will pop the old pads out, hopefully. The back pad basically has little hooks. Oop. You do not want to hang your crap from a brake hose. It's not good on it. So those will slide inside the center hole. We're going to take a wire brush, and these lips here that hold onto this little ridge here, we're going to clean those up, and we're going to put some high temp brake lubricant on there, just so this stuff needs to move and pivot. You don't want your brake setup to be completely solid. It has to move, it has to float when you're applying pressure on and off of that brake assembly through the pedal. Grab your wire brush. You can see all that wonderful, great stuff coming off there that you want to make sure you breathe in real deep so it gets in your lungs and your nose, and you're blowing rusty boogers for like 2 days straight. Just make sure you get it. Doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to get some of that stuff off of there. This way you'll knock off any built up crusties or anything like that. You don't need it to be 100% smooth. Doesn't have to be shiny new metal. You just want to make sure you don't have any calcified crap essentially in there. So we will take some of this high temp brake lube, put some on there, that way that can move and slide. And then we are going to take the new slides out, which these are kind of usually slide right in and out, so sometimes you gotta mess with them a little bit. These are already kind of frozen together, which is not cool. So we're gonna have to break these apart. Because we don't want them to be frozen and stuck. kind of defeats the purpose. They have put a little nipple on here for some reason that I think is stopping the threads from coming out, which doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. So what I'm doing instead is putting some on the top portion of this and then sliding it back in and out through here so that it'll suck some of that down and in. And then I'm also putting some on the outside here so that this will slide in and out through that cup. You just want everything to be able to move. You don't want anything just sticking, essentially. So we'll tighten this down a little bit. So that it will slide up and down. Get some of that in there. Add a little bit more so that everything, you can hear that, is moving freely. That is what we want. And then slide the pad back in. Lock those into these little holes here. So as you can see, they're in their little slots where they're supposed to be. I'm going to take the back. These little tabs here go on the back side so that you can use them to help pop the pads out when you're changing them. So essentially, it will look like that. Tabs facing this back side so you can stick a pry bar in here, pry them apart. You want to make sure before you try to put this on to this, and these don't like to always stay in, so you have to finagle. But you want to make sure these are pushed back, because if not, when you go to put it on here, it's going to hit the back side and it's not going to let you get the caliper all the way on. So this part is also not always easy, because now I have to get these back on this rotor, and actually that proved me wrong, it slid right in. So we lube that up on these positions, so now this will free move when it needs to. This rotor is always going to have a little bit of slop in it, and then all we have to do is line up our slide pins with their corresponding hole, which is easier said than done sometimes because you cannot see with this being one piece. Usually you'd have this center section gone and then you put that on afterwards and you can see these bolts where they need to be. But we unfortunately don't have that luxury because this is all one piece. So get started. Go to the next one. Make sure it's going to start where it's at, because if not, you're going to have to do some finagling and move stuff around. So once you've got them all started, you can just go ahead and tighten the one you're working on all the way down. Give it a good ooga-dooga, but not to the point where you're going to snap stuff off. There is torque specs for every bolt, basically. If you want, you can look up torque specs. I just tighten stuff. If it eventually comes loose, I didn't tighten it enough. So, alright. So, that is the caliper. The caliper itself is mounted up, pads are in, it is completely done. So, now, the bolts on here are a 7/16 for the line. And as soon as you break it loose, it's going to start spewing fluid. So you kind of want to get this process done as quick as you can. The caliper is leaking juice everywhere. And we just dropped one of the banjo bolts, or crush washer, whatever you want to call it. So basically, on either side of this is a copper washer. I'll pop this plug out, which I didn't even realize was in there, because the other side did not have one. Always grab the wrong tool for the job. That is rule number 1. And when that tool doesn't work, we grab the next wrong tool, which actually I don't need. I finally got it out of there. Alright, so you line up your bolt, make sure you've got your crush washer on each side. And you just tighten her down. Come through, snug everything up. So then, so brake fluid is super corrosive. It will eat paint off of anything it basically comes in contact with. So what you want to do is grab you some brake parts cleaner. Anywhere that crap landed, you want to go ahead and clean it off. Alright, so our new calipers came with new bolts and the crush washers, but those are brand new lines, so I didn't have to use them. But I'm gonna go ahead and show you what I'm talking about here. So on your brake bolts for your caliper, they will always have a hole in them. That's how the fluid gets into the system. This is your crush washer. It's basically just a copper washer. There will be one on either side. Back side, you'll run it through, you'll put one on the front side. Those just crush to make sure you're not going to have a leak. So basically, now that is all back together, we're going to try to gravity bleed the system, and then we will bleed the brakes. But that is it for now. I will catch y'all on the next one.